guys, this is the Great Jedi and welcome back to the channel. Now today, I'm continuing my How to Not Suck and Become Unstoppable in-depth hero guide series. And in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to play Kylo Ren in Star Wars Battlefront 2. But I'm not just going to show you how to play him. I'm going to show you the whole shebang like I do in this series, including striking, ability combos, use of stamina, star cards, and a bunch of other tips and tricks. And I do have quite a bit of tips and tricks to show you, so be sure to stay to the end because the tips at the end are just as important as the ones in the beginning. Also, if you're wanting to know how to lightsaber duel in general or how to use blaster heroes against saber heroes, as well as just how to use other heroes, then be sure to check out those guides on the channel once you're done with this video. All of those links will be in the description. Now that we've got that out of the way, if you like these types of videos or this series, be sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell down below so you never miss a video. It's free and it helps me out. Now let's start off with some basic things about Kylo Ren. Kylo has 750 health and 250 base health regen, which is about as average as you can get for a standard lightsaber wielder. And for those that don't know what a health regen pool is, it is basically when you take a ton of damage, you can heal back up to 250 HP, meaning that you don't get all of your health back. Although there is still a way of getting all of your health back if you end up taking a lot more damage than you initially thought, and that would be through his passive ability, which all of the heroes have with the exception of Bosk, and that is health on elimination. And basically what a passive ability means is that you have it no matter what. You don't need any star cards to have it, you automatically have it even at level 1, and that passive ability makes it where Kylo can regain health for each defeated enemy, and you get 20 health back for each trooper and reinforcement you kill, and 100 health back for an enemy hero. Now, regarding Kylo's stamina pool, it's pretty good. I would say he's about average overall, but it can get better with certain star cards, and he even has a super fast swing speed that can make up for that. Like, seriously, that is definitely one of his greatest strengths. He is a swinging machine, and if you guys don't know where to see his stamina bar, it's right above the health bar at the bottom of your screen. It's a bluish white color until you get low, which in that case will turn red and it depletes when you swing or block. And with Kylo's base stamina, you can swing to a total of 14 times before running out of stamina. Now, I did want to also mention that it will take less stamina for you to block than to swing, so be sure to use that to your advantage in whatever situation you may be in. Kylo also has a base of 2 normal dodges, which can be very effective when timing them right, because you can get out of a lightsaber combo and also give you the ability to dodge incoming attacks, whether it's the opponent's basic attack or their abilities. And what I mean by that is that Kylo has 2 dodges which will continually recharge, and if you time them correctly, you can avoid an attack. For example, let's say Luke is about to force push you or repulse you with his ability, you can actually dodge, and if you're in the middle of your dodge animation, then you won't be affected at all by it, and that goes for all dodges. Just notice I did say dodges and not dashes because they are different. And I mean different in the aspect of abilities because some heroes have actual dash abilities which are different from dodges. Now, about his base lightsaber damage, you can do about 125 damage from the front and about 165 damage from behind, which means that you can one-shot any of the infantry classes from the back with the exception of the heavy class. Although Kylo does have a very fast swing speed compared to a lot of the other heroes, so just keep that in mind and use it to your advantage in your movement. For example, if you're trying to get a quick kill and then get out of the area, you can do that with hitting them in the front because of his high damage, fast swing speed, and his fast movement in general. But just remember to be careful if there's a lot of enemies around because it's not a great idea to stay and get the kill because you may die or take a lot of damage since you're not a tank. It's just better if you leave, regain what health you can, and then go back and kick some butt with your abilities. Now, before I talk about his abilities, let's go over his strikes. Now remember, he has some decent damage strikes that are pretty dang fast, so be sure to combo some of these moves together and you'll see that you'll be able to take out your opponent very, very quickly. So first off, you have his basic attack, then his right dash attack, then his left dash attack, then his back dash attack, then his front dash attack, then his lunge attack, then his small jump attack, and then he even has a normal jump attack. Now, let's continue to talk about his 3 abilities. His middle one is called Frenzy, and that allows Kylo to enter Frenzied Rage and leaps from enemy to enemy, striking them with his lightsaber and reducing damage dealt to him. And this ability grants him 40% damage reduction, meaning he will only take 60% of the incoming damage. Now, this ability does strike your enemy 3 times, dealing 115 damage per strike, which can potentially deal 340 damage with this one ability without any star cards, and even if they're blocking, they will still receive 115 damage from the last strike because the last hit of your Frenzy ability goes through blocks. Yeah, I know. This ability is great when using it as a ranged attack, taking out chunks of health, finishing off enemies that are block spamming, and just taking out a few enemies at once. Plus, this ability only has about a 10-second cooldown, but the downside to this ability is that it bugs out sometimes and it can really mess you up. For example, there are some abilities in the game that can just sometimes cancel your ability straight out of the blue. Sometimes it'll just stop completely and just shoot you straight up in the air like you jumped or something. Sometimes it won't activate right away at all, even though someone is locked on. And plus, some people can even punish you for it if they know how to counter it, or if it just straight out doesn't work properly, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen certain players, especially Anakin players, be able to start their pull while you're doing it, and it still comes through and pulls you, or they can just swing spam you while you're doing it. Or if you end up being against a skilled player, they can even parry it and then dodge the last attack, which I will say is still pretty hard to do even for some people that are good at the game, so you really don't need to worry about that last one. But my overall point here is don't really rely on this ability too much, even though it's good, because it does have quite a bit of issues. Now, if the game works properly, then I would say use it no problem, but it does bug out from time to time, so just keep that in mind when you are in a bad position or don't really have a lot of health. Now, moving on to his left ability, which is called Pull. It is where Kylo can pull his enemies ahead off their feet and towards him, which knocks his enemies down, dealing about 10 damage. Now, this ability does have a slower activation animation, which means it will leave you super vulnerable when you're just standing there not blocking, not being able to dodge, just taking a lot of damage. Although, you can actually use this ability in midair, which I recommend doing almost every single time. Now, I recommend this because you're not standing in just one spot being vulnerable, and yes, you are vulnerable when you jump, but at least you're moving. You're being hard to hit compared to just standing still. Plus, most force powers in the game can't be used in midair, so lots of players don't expect you to be using a force power in the air, so it's a great way to catch them off guard. But just remember how the force abilities work in midair in this game. It's just like Luke's force push. You have to activate it on your way up from the jump or at your peak, not on your way back down, because if you decide to activate it on your way down, it won't do the activation animation until you hit the ground. And not only are you standing still, you are even more predictable and vulnerable by jumping and then standing in one spot once coming down from the pull, only to do 10 damage to your enemies. Also, keep that in mind, it only does 10 damage, so be careful for how many players you want to bring to your side. I say that because if you have a big group of enemies and then pull them over, you're going to have a lot of almost full health enemies right on you. And if all of your abilities are on cooldown, then you're most likely going to take a lot more damage than you anticipated. Plus, this ability does have a 20-second cooldown, so be sure to use it wisely. Not only that, the ability also bugs out from time to time, but that's just kind of common for most force powers in this game, so don't really rely on it too much when you're low on health. Now, moving on to his right ability, he has Freeze, and Freeze allows Kylo to freeze all of his enemies in front of him, immobilizing them for a duration. This ability freezes enemies for about 2.5 to 3 seconds. It takes priority almost over all force powers in the game. There are some force powers that you'll just have to watch out for, like Obi-Wan's all-out push ability, and you'll have to be able to learn that stuff as you go and play. Now, the only downside to this ability is that it has a 25-second cooldown and can sometimes bug out, as well as having an activation animation, meaning if people know how to counter it, they can punish you. And you may be wondering how the heck can they counter this freeze ability, and that is by dodging or blocking if they're a saber hero, but also keep in mind that this ability can also be used in midair, so be sure to use that to your advantage when your enemies aren't expecting it. Now, for this part of the video, I'm going to be going over my hero mode star cards, which include heroes versus villains and hero showdown, as well as giving you guys some tips for those modes, and my large scale mode star cards, which include Galactic Assault and Supremacy, as well as giving you guys some more tips for those modes as well. So let's get started off with my hero mode star cards. Now, before I do say them, I do want to say that all of the star cards are pretty good, and it's really up to you and your play style, but after playing the game for a while and figuring out my play style, these are the star cards that work best for me. Now, for the hero modes, I go with Resilience, Bloodlust, and Harsh Pull. I go with Resilience because whenever Kylo is in proximity of another villain, he receives 10% damage reduction and does 20 bonus damage. And in these hero modes, for the most part, you will be near another villain. Although, if you happen to be in a 1v1 situation in Hero Showdown, then I would switch out that card for Power of Darkness, and that's where you do 14 bonus damage for 6 seconds after you use your Frenzy ability. Then I chose the star card Bloodlust because that allows Kylo to deal even more damage with his Frenzy attack, and when you use this, you deal 20 more damage, meaning you'll be able to do 135 damage per hit on Frenzy. And remember that you can get 3 hits on Frenzy, meaning the total potential damage goes from 345 damage to 405 just with that one star card. So try and use this ability to the best of your advantage. Then I chose my last star card, Harsh Pull, because it will make your pull deal even more damage to enemies. In fact, when you use this pull, it will do 50 more bonus damage, which is a really good improvement compared to its base damage, because it's like a 500% damage increase, meaning that the pull goes from 10 damage to 60 with this star card. Now, if you don't like my main 3 choices, there is another star card I would recommend, and that would be Berserking Tantrum. I say that card because it will give you the ability to drain 20% less stamina, which basically means you get more stamina, but to me, it's just not as good as the other cards, because I feel like Kylo already has that pretty good stamina, and you can actually use your abilities to your advantage for stamina management. But if you still find yourself in need for more stamina, then this isn't a bad card. And now that you guys know why I chose those cards for hero modes, I can give you a quick few tips on how to take out those annoying enemy heroes. So one skill you gotta learn is parrying. If you don't know how to do it, be sure to check out the description for another video I've made because I go into depth on it. Now, besides parrying, comboing your abilities and using your fast and powerful strikes is a great way to use your hero effectively. For example, one strategy that you could use is to jump and pull your enemies towards you in midair. Then as the characters is trying to get up, that's when you freeze them. As they're frozen, all you gotta do is dash behind them, do 2 strikes in the back, and then use Frenzy. And most likely, if they are a skilled player, they will block the first 2 hits of Frenzy, but don't worry because the last hit will go through the blocks even though they're blocking. So just that combo alone does about 605 damage. And that's if the first 2 hits of Frenzy fails, as long as you chose those star cards I chose. And just remember, that's just one punishing combo if they happen to jump towards you, or lower their block, or whatever it may be. Now that's just one combo, and you're gonna learn way more as you play and get better and learn your playstyle. Now, if you think that the 605 damage combo was crazy, guess how much it would be if they didn't block it? Go ahead, guess. Put your guesses in the comments down below, I'm very curious. Alright, you ready? 915 damage, which can take out any lights out hero in the entire game. And if you think I'm crazy, I don't blame you, but it's true, and I'll show you how I got to that. First, you pull them, which does 80 damage if you have those star cards, because it already does 10, plus a star card that gives you 50 more damage on top of the 20 bonus damage when you're near an enemy hero. So then you have 80 damage for the pull, plus the 2 basic attacks in the back, which deal 165 damage each, but you also got to add the 20 extra damage per hit for the Resilient star card, so that brings up the total of 370 damage for those 2 strikes, plus the 80 damage pull, which is 450, and then you have the 3 hits for Frenzy. 1 hit equals 115 base damage, but then those 2 star cards I told you brings up the total to 155 damage per strike. And if you land all 3 of those, that will equal 465 damage just for Frenzy. And if you add that with the 450 you just did with the pull and basic attacks, you will have a total of 915 damage. So just keep on practicing that combo and you'll get the hang of it. You may not be able to kill every enemy with that, but you will do some serious damage right off the bat. Also, another thing when using your freeze ability, if you're focusing on winning the objective and not just trying to get the most damage, you can actually keep the opponent frozen as your team takes them out, because when people shoot at those frozen enemies, they stay frozen for the rest of the time. But once you strike them with your saber, they will be released. So sometimes it's better to let your team deal the damage with your freeze ability. Just overall, be sure to use Kylo's fast movement and swing speed to your advantage, as well as timing his amazing abilities. Now, if you're going against a blaster user, you need to close that distance. So I would recommend you dodging side to side or start jumping. That way it's hard for them to hit you until you get close enough to use your pull. And remember, you should use your pull in midair. And once you pull them, if you're a skilled player, there's no way you're losing that battle. You got several abilities that can be used at range to your advantage. Plus, you're just that much more deadly up close. So remember, you can freeze them and use that same combo I gave you earlier, or you can even let them waste their rolls if they're really poly and they can't block Frenzy, so there's really nothing they can do about it. Although, if you're having trouble getting close enough to those blaster heroes after pulling them, you can also just hold up your block as you're walking towards them to start closing that distance. Just be aware of your stamina and those stuns that can go through your block. Now, for the larger scale game modes, I went with the star cards Bloodlust, Harsh Pull, and Total Control. I've already explained why I like to use Bloodlust and Harsh Pull, but I want to explain why Total Control is so killer in these game modes. I go with Total Control because it allows Kylo to freeze enemies 50% longer if he freezes more than 3 enemies, which you would think is hard to do, but it's really not when you're in those objective areas or those hallways when there's tons of enemies, and they will be shooting at you. So if you use your freeze ability, you'll be able to freeze them not only for the base 3 seconds, but an additional 1.5 seconds with a total of 4.5 seconds, meaning all of your enemies will be standing still for almost 5 seconds, which may not seem a lot to you, but trust me, if you're standing still for 5 seconds with a lot of people around, or even a few people around, you're going to die. And if you don't, it's a miracle. I've seen people die in like 3 seconds with moving. So the fact that you can just freeze the enemy team and just watch your team shoot at everyone for almost 5 seconds is absolutely insane, and you should be using this to your team's advantage. But if you don't want to use it to your team's advantage, so that way you can get the damage or whatever the reason is, and you just want to be the one that takes them out, it's still a great star card. I personally recommend letting your team shoot at them, because once you hit someone with your saber, they do get released. But you can also use it to your advantage if you freeze them and then use your frenzy ability, and by the time frenzy is even up, they will just be getting released, meaning that they won't be shooting at you until they're on their feet again. So that gives you a couple free seconds to get whatever kills you can without taking too much damage. Another thing I would recommend in these modes is to sometimes use your abilities defensively and use them as an escape route, which basically means if there's a lot of people on you, or maybe there's just a hero on you, you can just turn around, freeze them, and then continue running back to your team. Or you can just pull them and then freeze them while running. You know, just have some fun figuring out what combos suit you best. Just overall be aware of your surroundings and be careful when to use those abilities, because they do have an activation animation and you can die pretty quick if they try and punish you for it, or if you don't end up timing them right, or you know, if the ability bugs out and doesn't work. But also remember to use those abilities in midair to help you out, and also keep in mind that you also have a lot of range in your abilities, so be sure to use that to your advantage when going against those enemies, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen Anakin and Kylo players that walk straight up to me, pull, and then let me just tell you the problem about that. First off, you're running towards me. So as you're doing that, I'm dealing so much damage to you just by shooting you in your head. Then you use the pull, which has an activation animation, and you're defenseless. So I get to continue shooting at you until the ability goes through. Then most likely I'll be behind you, and then I get to shoot at you until you kill me. Now trust me, that damage starts to add up pretty dang quickly, and that's if it's only me and not my team. And that's only if the ability decides not to bug out, so please just keep that in mind. Now if you guys want to know some good maps that you can do decent with Kylo, and I'm not saying you can't do good with him on any of the other maps, because you definitely can. You can honestly do great with him no matter the map, as long as he's in the right hands. But if you're wanting to practice with Kylo, maps like Naboo, Starkiller Base, Kashyyyk, and Jakku are great for him. Anyways guys, that's going to do it for this hero guide. If you did enjoy it, please consider liking the video if you liked it, or dislike it if you disliked it. But if any of you guys have any questions, comments, or constructive criticism for me, please put them all in the comments down below, because I do read and respond to them. Seriously, some people don't ask me questions because they think I won't answer them, or they don't want to bother me. What's the worst that can happen? Me not answer? Come on. Remember, I'm here to help you guys out. Also remember that there's always improvement that can be made, so be sure to let me know what I can do better for all those future hero guides. And if you're interested in those future hero guides, Battlefront 2 in general, just everything Star Wars, or just want to help me out, please consider sharing, liking, and subscribing while hitting that notifications bell down below so you never miss a video. And if any of you have any other tips for Kylo Ren that you can give, be sure to do so in the comments down below, because there's tons of tips and different strategies out there, so others may learn from the comment section as well. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and may the Force be with you always.